අයිබෝවන් සුබ උදෑසනක් වේවා. National Advanced Level Information and Communication Technology. Today we are going to learn, we are going to do revision. Competency level 1.1. Revision. These are the revision outcomes. Define data and outline its life cycle. Organize the needs of a processor or process to define data and information. Recognize the strong interrelationship between data, process and information. List various forms of data and their characteristics. Now, these are four main concerns, as well as we are going to describe the characteristics of quality data. Illustrate the value of information. Describe the characteristics of valuable information. Recognize big data, their needs and analysis. Right. Data. The term data is used to refer raw facts and figures. Now, we will consider what is data, and we will consider what do you mean by raw facts and figures. As you know, data is in our living environment. How do you know that? Thinking about facts, I will give some examples. Right? Data as facts: names, book, car, sky, a particular date, maybe date of birth, image and sound. These are some facts that we can find in our living environment. So, data as facts. Do you know that we use these names to refer to these data or refer to these objects in our living environment? Data as figures, some values, 41, a value like this and a value like this. Raw facts and figures imply they are meaningless. Now, we will try to understand what do you mean by meaningless. If you just give a data, book, car, a value like 41, it does not convey a particular meaning. So, that is why we say raw facts and figures imply they are meaningless. So, what we want to do? We collect data and we store them. Why we want to store them? Because we want to process them. Then once we process this data, we convert this data into meaningful data. So, we say meaningful data as information. Data is in our living environment. You know that. Think about a particular fact, tree, car. So, it is in our living environment. So, what we do, we name them in order to refer to them, right. Data is logical or software that you cannot touch or tangible. What do you mean by this? Data is logical. We will take an example. Just think about this particular object. This is a pen. In Sinhala we say panel. In different languages we name them differently. But same physical object has different names now. That means the names given to this particular object is logical. So, that is why we say data is logical. So, you can touch this particular pen, that is the physical object, but can you touch the name given to this? That is something logical. You cannot touch that. So, that is what you mean by touch or cannot touch or tangible. I think you can understand now. Okay. Data is used to refer to reference to our living environment. Data is collected together to reference or analysis. Now, you know what do you mean by reference. You call this pen, you call a particular person by his or her name, referencing, right. Like that, what do you mean by analysis? If you want to study something in detail, we can collect some data and we can have a broad view about that object. So, that is what you mean by analysis. Data can be classified into two types: quantitative data and qualitative data. Quantitative data. Now, the easiest way to remember this, think about the word. Quantitative means you have a quantity. Quantitative data can be measured. Quantities can be measured and expressed numerically. Using numbers, you can express them. You can tell them. Say, age 41. Quantitative data focuses on numbers and mathematical calculations to recommend the final course of action. What do you mean by that? You know, quantities can be measured in numbers. You know, the quantity always involved with mathematical operations, calculations to recommend the final course of action. We will see some examples. Example, the age of your car, say 30 years, right. So, if you concern about this particular data, it gives the quantity and it gives the recommendation to buy it or leave it out. The number of students in a class, again quantitative, again you are giving a particular quantity. Number of students in a class, say 30 students or 41 students. Then depending on the number, it recommends the final course of action. What do you mean by this? If you have more numbers than 40, say 200 students in a class, then you can recommend the note cannot be dictated, the notes are printed and individually given. So, can you see that the recommend the final course of action because of the number or the quantity. Marks obtained for ICT paper, then you can obviously know whether you can get through the exam or not. Say final semester's mark, if it is very low, you have to work hard to get through it. If you are getting like more than 70s, 80s, then obviously I can recommend you what? Recommend the final course of action. I can recommend you that you are getting through the exam definitely. Then qualitative data. You can see by reading the word qualitative, you get some quality. That is the easiest way of remembering things. Get the simple meaning of the word, right? The qualitative data is the classification of objects based on the attributes and the properties, quality, based on the attributes. We will see some examples. Qualitative data is not measurable. Sometimes you can say you are very kind. So, how can you measure that? Sometimes you can say, right, you are very beautiful. What is the measurement unit? So, that is why we say qualitative data is not measurable. Properties and attributes can be used to gain the initial understanding. Say as an example, you can say beautiful, the properties or attributes, you can say very beautiful, like that. The properties and attributes can be used to gain the initial understanding. What do you mean by this initial understanding? The first understanding. Initially, how you understand the particular object. We will consider some examples. The softness of your skin. Can you see that? Some attributes are there, right? But you cannot measure it. The color of your eyes. Goodwill of an organization. So, you can identify some certain features of an organization and you can say the goodwill of the organization is very good. The life cycle of data. You can see it is a life cycle. You create data, data creation, manage data, remove of obsolete data. Now, we will think about this particular life cycle. As you know now, data is in our living environment. What we do? We input them. Before input, you know that we have to collect them. We have to organize them. After that, you will input that data into the computer. Or if it is a manual system, you can have a filing cabinet, you can have a folder, you can save them, save this data inside that. You create data in the system. We will discuss these points in detail little bit later. The management, you have to manage them. The data you are managing. Why? Why you want to manage them? If you want to retrieve them, if you want to get this data back, right, you have to store them perfectly. Otherwise, what is happening? You are wasting your time to search this data. Removal of obsolete data. What do you mean by obsolete? Not in use. You are removing, you are deleting data that is not in use. Why? Because you do not want to keep them. If you remove them, you are saving your space. Sometimes this space factor will be very, very expensive concerning about business organizations, concerning about computerized systems hard disk capacities. If you go a little bit further, server capacity in a network, sometimes you have to pay and get this capacity. So, it is very expensive. Right, life cycle consists of data creation, management of data, removal of obsolete data. Okay, now we will consider things in detail. Data creation is the process of introducing data into the computer system or create inside the computer system. Here we are concerning about computerized systems. If you think about manual systems, right, the creation of data can be saved, say the data can be saved and organized in a register or a file, or sometimes you can keep a book to record this data. But in computerized systems, the data creation is the process of introducing data into the computer system. Now, we will think about one simple example. What do you mean by introducing data into the computer system? You know data is outside, you want to save this data in the computer. then to save the data in the computer, you must create a particular memory area in the computer. You know that initially, say as an example, if this is CPU, you can get what? What is this? Internal memory. So, you have other parts, you know that ALU, and you have control unit CU. Whatever the data that you want to process is saved inside this initially. Say as an example registers, right. So, now outside we have a particular memory location called RAM outside the CPU. You know that this is the computer's main memory, right? Right, computer's main memory, right? Whatever the things that you input through, say keyboard or any other method, keyboard or any other input method, you will send this data to this memory location, main memory. You know that this is a temporary memory location. Once the computer is switched off, this memory gets cleared. Understood? Okay. Right, then what you do, then you can give this data to this internal memory, and at the meantime, if you want to save this data for your future reference, you need big capacity, what? Maybe hard disk. Hard disk. So, you will send this data to the hard disk for your future reference. Now, what I want to tell you here, introducing data into the computer system, you can input, but how can you input data without creating needed memory locations in the main memory? You know that we are doing programming. You know that we are defining variables in different data types. What is the concept? What is the objective? The objective is you are creating necessary memory locations needed in the RAM to save this data in the RAM. Say as an example, you input mark, say ICT mark 95, then you have to create, you must create a memory location in the RAM before you input this data into the computer. So, creating this memory location in the RAM is referred as coding data. You code this memory area in order to input data. So, what you do, you introducing data into the computer system. Can you understand? Right. Then you input data into the computer system, you introduce data into the computer system to create inside the computer system. That is what you mean by data creation. You create data. You know, in order to create data, you have to have a particular memory location. So, you code the memory location by using data types. Then, if you think that this data is needed for your future reference, you can save this in the permanent memory location, like in hard disk. Right, I think you can understand. Right, inside the computer system. Example, student administration system collect data from students when they register. I think you have your experience. Think about you. If you want to register, right, they may give you an application form, a piece of paper, or sometimes you can go online and fill an application form, online form. Right. Then in student administration system, collect data from students. You fill, you give your name, date of birth, address, age, and your interest, and all these details are given in the form. We say registration form. Then in manual system, what they do? They keep that particular document and they file it. After that, end of the day maybe, sometimes initially, right, they will file it according to the age. But in computerized systems, what you should do? You have to create a particular memory area depending on the values that you are giving, or that is insisted in the paper. So, what you do? You have to create the exact memory structures initially in the RAM, or you can save it in a database. We will discuss that little later, right. So, what you do? You are collecting data, right. Sometimes the manual form is given, paper, and the data entry operator will enter this data into the computer system. Can data entry operator input it without creating or without coding the memory structures needed in the computer? You can't do that. Initially, you have to prepare the database structures, file structures, everything is set, then data entry operator will input these values into the computer and save them. That means, you are introducing this data and saving this data in the computer system. Right. Now, think about a fully automated method in your syllabus. Sometimes the students are given a special piece of paper, specially printed paper. Example, you can get a paper like this. Right. You are getting a application form say registration form, I am writing abbreviations, then you get a particular field called name. Then you are getting something like this to fill your name. Actually, it is longer than this, just to show you. Then under this, you are getting some area like this, say starting with A, B, C and goes up to Z. So, what you do, if your name is starting with C, you cross this. If you want, you can write C here. This is a special, this is a paper that is printed specially, right? And you can use an automated input device called optical mark reader to read this. This is a very efficient, fast way of entering data into the system. Likewise, name, age, address line 1, address line 2, you can fill. And you know that the background is set up to save this data. Say as an example, you have a particular registration file or table or registration relation, right, and you can save it under particular field. What? You can save the name. Another field or another column, in other words, you can save the age. Likewise, you can introduce this data into the system. But if it is happening online, web-based systems, these, not this type of forms, the forms are given in the computer. So, you can nicely fill all these details and you can submit, and in the server side these details are saved. I think now you can understand different ways that data can be created according to the life cycle. Data creation. We will go to the next step. The management of data is the process of keeping data securely and making them accessible necessarily. So, what do you mean by this? We will take some examples. You can say that the student details are stored, student details are sorted and stored, maybe in a filing cabinet if you concern about a manual system, computer database. Now, the students who have registered, their application forms or registration forms are sorted maybe in alphabetical order, sometimes depending on the age. So, you can sort them and you can store it in a filing cabinet. Why? Because if you want to retrieve them, you can do it fast. If you have big filing cabinets, what you can do, you can number these filing cabinets and you can create an index like in libraries. And if you want to get a particular student's application form, what you can do, you can nicely go to the particular correct cupboard because it is mentioned in the index. From the index you get the particular rack. From there you can get the number and you can nicely get it without wasting time. That is what you mean by, in a manual system, sorted and stored. Then what about computer databases? So, in future chapters we are learning in detail how these databases are created, how we can organize this data. The concepts are very simple. Computer database, you know now, you can save data in a database. So, what is a database? We can simply say it is a huge collection of data. If you write that answer in the exam, you will not get marks, full marks. Why? You have to say, you must say, it is a huge collection of organized data. Very, very important. You can throw data everywhere. You can save data in the hard disk everywhere. Sometimes we do like that. We save our films everywhere in our D drive sometimes, and it is very difficult to search and get it. You have your experiences, right? So, without doing that, we are organizing them. If it is a relational database, we are organizing them in tables. So, we are discussing in the future, right? The next sections we will see. I can show you. Now, say as an example, you have a database like this. This is the symbol that we use to indicate a database. Inside that, you can have tables to organize them. Like this. This table can be student table. This table can be student table. This table can be parent table, like that. You can organize this data in these tables, and if you want, you can interconnect these tables by using relationships, right. So, you can nicely organize this data in the computer system. So, that is under management of data. You can link them, and what is the advantage? Later we will discuss the comparison of manual and computerized systems. The advantage is you can retrieve them very fast. The redundancy, repeating data, you can what? You can eliminate, or you can reduce. You can reduce. You can reduce the data redundancy, but sometimes you cannot eliminate it, completely get rid of, right. Then you can nicely organize data in computer database. Right. Keeping data up to date, change of telephone number or address, it is very important. No point of keeping old data. In other words, data that is not updated. Example, you are keeping a student's old address or telephone number. Change of telephone number, you have to update them. Update means you go to the location. It can be a manual system or it can be computerized system. If the manual system is stored manual system is stored data after sorting them. It is very easy to find the location, a particular file or a particular application form, and then you can nicely erase it and write new telephone number. But if it is a computerized system, you know, in relational database, data is organized in different tables like student table and parent table. You have links between called relationships like one to one, one to many, many to many. Using these relationships, you will be able to go to the particular correct location and change. In case if data is duplicated in different tables, all the locations are updated without any extra effort. That is the advantage, right. So, address is the same, telephone number is the same. If it is changing, so under management of data, you have to update this data. Log file cabinets implement usernames and passwords, user access levels, firewalls and encryption. Now, under management, you can, under creation you can introduce data. Under management, you must protect your data. You have to provide adequate security. How do you do that? If it is a manual system, you can use different physical security methods like locking the cupboard, locking the room, implementing a security camera to watch. Like that you can use different methods and implement usernames and passwords. If it is a computerized system and if data is saved in a database system, so you can ask user to, you can create usernames and passwords, right. Actually you can't create passwords, let them to create their password. You give the username and you give, very important thing is user access levels. If you concern about student registration system, you may have different access levels. Example, data entry operator can only enter data into the system, the person cannot change anything. That means user data entry operator can see the system in a particular way that the data entry operator can see some certain files. Most probably application forms that you can enter data to these tables. Then the second level can be administrator level or supervisor level. Then under this supervisor, there may be 5-6 data entry operators. Then he has more broader view than what the data entry operator. Then above him you have administrator level that he can manage all supervisors. Likewise, you can maintain user access levels. Why? In order to protect them. Right. Protect what? Protect data. Then firewalls. Now, if it is a network situation, if you are accessing data in a network, most probably you are accessing this data, or students, parents are accessing this data through internet using different remote computers. Then you can implement a particular firewall to restrict the accesses to our database. We will discuss these things in detail later. Then encryption. What do you mean by encryption? Encryption is the process of changing the format of the file. Sometimes you can use encryption key. So, you change the format, and if you don't know the password or encryption key, you will not be able to open the file. So, what is the situation that you can apply this? Say you and your friend are administrators or data entry operators. Then they can view same set of relations or tables. Your friend can damage some data that you have saved, and friend can only access to some certain tables. You can access to some certain tables, different levels again. Think like that. Then what you can do, you can save a particular, you can put a particular encryption key in order to protect your file, because you know the encryption key and you will be able to give it and open the file. The others, sometimes others cannot open because they do not know the encryption key. So, encryption is the process of providing a security to a particular file. We will discuss this encryption later in detail. The removal of obsolete data is the process of removing data from the system whenever data will be outdated and found to be unnecessary. What do you mean by this? If data is outdated, what is the point of keeping them? No need. So, you delete them, you remove them, you erase them, right. Example, remove the records of students who left school. One example. If you concern about some other examples, think about keeping patient records, right. If the patient has died, then no need to maintain their records, you can remove them from the system. Likewise, right. Data creation in detail. How to store, how to store data. Data can be classified into basic two groups: manual data and computerized data. How data is stored manually? Data is stored manually in books, paper files and ledgers. Example book. Hierarchical structure of a book. Actually, this is given to show you some certain hierarchy that we can save data. How the book is used to organize data manually. Book, then you have units in the book, unit 1, unit 2, unit 3 likewise, and then chapters we have, topics we have, paragraphs we have, and then sentences. Then a sentence consists of, we will see some examples, words, white spaces and symbols sometimes, and the characters. Now, if you are concerned about the examples, say the book name is Information System for You, say units, unit 1 and unit 2, and you may have some other units as well. Chapters, unit 1 you have chapter 1 to 6, and unit 2 you have chapter 7 to 10. Then topics, under chapter 1 you have 1, 2, 3, 4 topics. Say likewise under chapter 10 you have again 1 to 5 topics. Then paragraphs, that means the topic consists of so many paragraphs. So, you can say topic 1 like this consists of what? Paragraphs 1 to n, say 10 paragraphs. Then a sentence, say data is raw facts, this is one sentence in that paragraph. So, if you further split this into detail, it consists of what? Words, white spaces and symbols. These are words, data is, right. So, in English you have different terms, but in computer reference I am just simplifying this to understand. Then you have white spaces, in between you have white spaces. If it is not, you can't read this data. Then you have some symbols like this, full stop, at sign and for sign, like that you have so many. And the characters, if you concern about a particular word, it consists of alphabet characters, right, D, A, T, A, I, S likewise. You can understand the hierarchy of data. So, what I want to show you here, if you want to save this information system for you book, you have to save individual characters, and then you have to save sentences, then you have to save or store paragraphs, then you have to save chapters, and then units, right, and then you can save the entire book. This is the hierarchy. So, what I want to show here, how data is saved, you save this data in the computer system. What is that? I mean the characters, these characters in the computer system. We will see this in detail little bit later. If it is a database system, hierarchical structure of an electronic database, as you know now, we can say customer table or customer relation, and you can have columns like this and rows like this. You have different words in databases, right. Then you can organize this data in tables like this, right, customer table, item table, supplier table, and they have their columns. Then this is the entire database. Then you have database, then you get what? The tables or relations, then you get records or tuples. Then this is an example of one record, customer ID, I am using some abbreviations here, the short terms. So, you can get a particular data value here, customer name, customer address and customer telephone number. Then this record consists of different fields or attributes. You can understand that, different fields or different attributes. Now, you know now, if it is a record, the data types can be different. It can be integer data type, it can be real data type, it can be it can be in different data types. But if you concern about a field, here in this field you have so many data, say as an example, right, field customer ID, say it is a string data type. So, you can have C143, C144, C14445 like that. You can have lot of data inside this or down inside this. Then what happen? This field has the same, the values are in the same data type. So, we will do that later in detail, right. Then collection of characters, right. This is just to explain, understand, give you a basic level understanding, right. Right. In detail we will discuss in different chapters, right. Collection of characters, you have collection of characters, right. Similarly, right, collection of characters like data is, right, in the previous example, then how data is stored electronically in the computer. Data is electronically, the data can be in a file or book like that, or in a database like that, right, that we have discussed. Now, say data is electronically stored in e-books and database files electronically, and individual character is saved in 8 bits binary pattern in the computer memory. This is what we have to understand. Whatever you can see the hierarchy, and ultimately the down we get individual characters. So, we are saving these individual characters in 8 bits. Example, just think a particular word called man. Each character has ASCII value in ASCII table. This ASCII stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. So, this table has a ASCII value as shown in the below table, character, ASCII value 8 bits binary. So, M, capital M has a different ASCII value. Similarly, if you have simple M here, it has a different ASCII value and different binary pattern, right. A, you have a different ASCII value 97 and a different binary pattern 8 bit binary. Then N, you have a different ASCII value and different pattern, binary 8 bit binary pattern. The word man is saved as this way. Can you see the number of digits, right? In English language we have 1, 2, 3 characters to save if you are writing manually, but in binary can you see, right, you have how many 8 into 3, 24 individual digits to save. So, you can understand one thing, this is why we say remembering and working with binary is very difficult. One example, right. Then what we will do, you have the pattern like this is the same pattern, bit pattern is used to represent the word man in binary. What do you mean by representing? I am present here. If I am getting absent, I will send some other lecturer or teacher to represent me. You can understand the meaning now. You are dealing with this, This is the analog form that we are dealing with. If you want to save this in the computer, you know that you have to convert that into binary pattern like this. Using ASCII table, you convert this man into binary pattern in this way, and you are going to save this in the computer system. Now, can you understand? The same thing is presented in a different format or form. So, that is what you mean by representing. So, you can understand the man word is represented by using a particular 24-bit binary pattern. Okay, then information. What is information? You know, up to this we have discussed things in detail about data. Now, we are in to discuss information. Information is the meaning we attach to the data. We attach some meaning to data. Example 1. So, we have discussed some data. Can you remember? Data as facts. These are the data that we have considered. Now, look at this, how we can attach some meaning to this data. Then if you attach some meaning to this data becomes what? Information. Very simple. Example, my best friend is Pubudu. So, you have given a particular data, a particular fact, name Pubudu, but you are adding some extra details. You attach some extra details to this data. Then it gives more about this data, more meaning about this data. Book, I am attaching some meaning, my ICT book. Specifically, it gives some information about the book. So, that is information. It is very simple. A red color car, car is data. But if you attach some meaning to this, it is a red color car. So, it is data, it is information now. Blue sky with bright sun. You are explaining about sky. You are attaching some extra details. So, that is information again. My date of birth is. So, just a date, but you say this is my date of birth. So, you can say this is not data, but information. The image with white background, you can just see an image, but you are specifically telling I want that image with white background. So, you are giving some data, details about, attaching extra things about what? About the image. So, that then the image is data, but with extra details it is information. Soundtrack, sound, you can say MP3 soundtrack, again attaching some valuable details. Data as figures. Number of students in 12A class is 41. This is just a rough figure. So, what you do? You attach something, some meaningful details to this, and this became information. Then my registration number is 250299. So, attaching some meaning, then this is data, but this is information with some meaning. Salary is 100,000 rupees, some meaning is attached to this particular rough value. The processed data is referred as information. Once you process data, right, you can consider that as information. In this case, what we did, we attached some information or some extra details to data, then data became information, right. Right, now we are going to compare data and information. Data after processing information. That means the processing of meaningless data generates meaningful data. Now, try to understand this. The processing of meaningless data, this is meaningless data. You do not have any meaning. You know the examples now we did just before. You know meaningless data. It can be facts and figures, qualitative or quantitative, right. It can be anything, right. So, meaningless data, and if you process them, you get meaningful data. 41 is a particular rough value, log value, but if you attach number of students in a class, that is meaningful data, and this meaningful data is referred as information. Instructions are given to convert meaningless data into meaningful information. So, what do you mean by this? Instructions are given, this processing is done by sometimes a user or sometimes the computer software. So, computer software, you know, computer software is classified into application software and system software. Application software is used by user. Why? In order to delegate user tasks or user problems to computer hardware. System software is used to operate computer hardware components. So, what is happening here now? If you concern about application software, you know that application software is basically divided into, what are the parts? Application software, languages and packages. So, if you know about a particular programming language like Python, Pascal, VB.NET likewise, you can write your own program to delegate, to give, in other words, to delegate your problem to computer hardware. Then you are an intelligent user concerning about the computer system. But if you do not know how to write a program, then we can switch into, you can switch into packages like Office package, Word, Excel, Access, PowerPoint. You can again you can give or you can delegate your problem to computer hardware. Somehow application software is used to delegate user problem to computer hardware. Right now, in this case, when you are writing a computer program, they say the instructions, computer program consists of instructions, how to do, what to do, when to do. Likewise, you have so many instructions, right? Instructions are given. In a computer program, you have instructions. The computer system follow these instructions step by step, right, in order to convert this meaningless data into meaningful data, or we say information. Data is meaningless, but information is meaningful, you know now. Now look at this particular diagram. Data, you input data, then under the given instructions you process them, then what is happening? You are processing data and converting meaningless data into meaningful data, that is information. Why we generate information? To use them, to output them, that is the use, right. You generate information and you output to necessary people, or sometimes computers or devices, you give them to take decisions. So, can you understand? So, if you are concerned about inputting data, right, being this is a revision class, you know that you have so many input methods, manual input methods, computerized input methods, automated input methods. In other words, right, example, sensor automatically input data into the computer system, right, you know, input devices are there. If you follow my lesson very carefully, you know now before input you have to prepare memory structures needed. That means you have to code data, code memory, I mean you have to code memory, and you get these instructions into the computer. That is the first step of the life cycle, and then you start processing them, and then under the instruction of given program, right, and then convert this into information. Information is an output of a process, and the same information would be a data for another process. Now, what do you mean by this? This is why we say it is a life cycle, right. It is a cycle, right. Can you understand that, right? Say as an example, just think about this example. You have some values like data 90, 85, 65, these are some values, data. Then processing this, process is what? Add values to data. You are adding values to this data. In this case we say you are adding, we say 90 is ICT marks, 85 is physics marks, 65 is chemistry marks. You have simply give value to this particular data, add value, right. Then what is happening here? Data is converted into more meaningful information. The most valuable resource in ICT is information. How do you feel? Is it correct? So, why we say like that? What are the examples? Can you just think and let me know what do you mean by most valuable resource in ICT is information? What is a resource? Resource is something we use for our own benefit. We utilize them to do what? In order to do some certain activity. It is a resource. Then the most valuable resource in ICT, what are the resources in ICT now? Compute is a resource. Why? We are using it to do what? Say as an example, data processing. It is a resource. So, then now if you concern about the computer hardware, you know that you have motherboard, CPU, RAM, ROM and CD-ROMs and so many devices, very expensive, maybe CPU, maybe very expensive. But why we say the most valuable resource in ICT is information? Say as an example, your CPU is not working, what you can do? You can just throw it, go to the hardware shop and replace it by a new one. It is very simple. But think about information. Information is generated after processing something under the instructions. In order to process something, you have to collect what? You have to collect needed, adequate, correct information, data. You have to collect data. Sometimes it can be information in a life cycle as well, right? Can you understand? So, once you generate information, if it is missing or if it is corrupted, if virus has deleted it, then you have to reverse back and identify the process to generate it. But the most difficult problem is to collect this valuable data. Collecting this valuable data sometimes will not be possible. Sometimes you will never be able to collect the same amount of data in the same range, right, correct data. So, that is the reason why we say, insist, the most valuable resource in ICT is information. You can understand that if you know people are providing lot of security in order to collect, in order to protect information concerning about computerized information systems. Now, just think, can you remember the previous, right? You have same thing, but what happened? That information that we have generated again input as data, life cycle. Data values are now, the previous diagram we insisted this as information, but we are inputting it back, right, and say data values now, and you do the calculation. Say now data values are ICT marks 90, physics marks 85, chemistry marks 65. Then you do a new process to calculate the total, you add them and calculate the total, and then you get the total because of the process. Then you output the information values, total is 240. Then this is the information that we have provided or generated of this particular process by processing this data. You can see if you go backward, can you see you have meaningless data values, you have converted that into meaningful data or information, and then this information is again input back into the system as data values, and then do a separate process and generate information. Right, now we are into a new heading, the characteristics of information. First one, relevance, timeliness, accuracy, completeness, and understandability. Now, can you remember, we have insisted that the information is the most valuable resource. In order to generate that information, we have to provide the correct process again, and we have to collect relevant data at the correct time, that data will be accurate, and not only that, that data must be complete and it must be in an understandable format. Can you see? Right? That is why we said information is the most valuable resource in ICT. Now, these are the characteristics of information. Right? We will go into detail. Relevance. The information will be, the information will depend on its relevance for a particular person or an organization. We have discussed about student registration system. So, we cannot collect extra details other than what is needed. We can keep all student details and their parent details. Those are the relevant information to that particular system. If you collect other than that, under the Data Protection Act, you have to get the permission. Without the permission of the data owner, you cannot keep any value inside your database or manual files. Timeliness. An information should be updated. Timely information is valuable for making effective decisions. It is very important. You have to collect information or data in the accurate time and generated them in the correct time, and the generated information should be updated. If you do not collect updated data, once you process them, you will never be able to produce updated information. So, timeliness is your information is up to date. What do you mean by up to date? It is reflecting the current situation. If it is not reflecting the current situation of an organization, if you start making decisions, then the decisions will not be effective. In other words, we can say decisions are outdated. accuracy. Accuracy. We will see what is accuracy. Accurate information is helpful for making correct decisions. What do you mean by that? Accurate information. Now, you know that if you concern about the particular diagram, you have data, then in the middle you have what? Process, and this side you have what? Information. If you collect inaccurate data, what will happen? Even though your process is correct, you will not generate the information needed. That means you are collecting inaccurate information. In other words, we say that is what? Garbage. If you collect garbage, garbage in, even though your process is correct, garbage out. That is, we say GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So, that is very important to collect accurate information. Now, how do you collect accurate information? Can you remember, you have a process called validation check. You validate data. When data entry operator is entering to the computer system has validation rules to what? To validate them. So, validate this data and save them, but before processing they are performing another very vital checkpoint or check, that is verification. You input data using validation rules, you check if the data is valid. If they are valid, still you are not 100% sure about what data is correct. That is why you implement the second checkpoint called verification. You take your original and take the computer enter data and you do what? You recheck. We say on screen check, right? Or you sometimes you can say double entry. You input the same thing again or 2 times by using different data entry operators. If both are correct only, data is taken as valid data or verified data. Then the data is accurate, then the next thing is the processing. If the processing is not accurate, even though the data is accurate, you have something, you have a problem in your program, or you have a problem in the method that you have selected. So, unfortunately, you will not be able to generate what? Accurate information. Then this is very important. Validity of information depends on the accuracy of data. The value of information is totally depending on the accuracy of data. So, that is why most of the time before start processing, we do validation and verification processes in order to purify or correct data. Completeness. Let me see. The information presented with the context are useful where incomplete information is not sufficient to make decision. The information must be complete. I will give a simple example. to have a particular idea. Now, just think you are following 3 subjects. If you want to calculate the total in your semesters, you have to have all 3 subject marks. If one is not there, if one is invalid, you will not be able to generate the total plus the average, and if the average is not given for one student, then you cannot get the class average. If the class average is not done properly, then you cannot get the grade average. You can understand, right? The completeness of this information. Now, if you concern about the registration system, student registration system, if you do not collect and store all relevant information, example, you saved all the other details except the parent's telephone number and the email address to inform, then what happened? Your system is incomplete. So, in an emergency, you are not in a position to call parents and inform them. So, that is the completeness. You have to completely, you have to analyze this data and completely store all necessary data. Understandability. What do you mean by understandability? Information should be clear and unambiguous. I have given an example to indicate what do you mean by ambiguous. It conveys different meanings. If you say NIC, it can imply national identity card, or in computer terms it can say network interface card, very ambiguous. So, that is why most of the time we are not using abbreviations, short terms, to save data and information. So, understandability. So, you must give data in a proper format and in a proper structure where you can understand what you have saved, your data and your information. Right. Then next one, huge organized collection of manual information creates manual information system. You know the word system. What is a system? We can say a system, just imagine this is a system. You have so many components in this particular system. What are these? These are components. These are components. And these components are used to achieve a target. You are going to achieve a target. The collection, just a collection of components, won't say, just a collection of information we cannot say as a system. Then these components are nicely managed to achieve targets. So, collection of components plus target is a system. This is a system, the collection of all these. this is a system now. So, the components are managed to achieve the target, and the components with the target can be referred as a system. Then what is information system? You have saved, you have so many components like hardware, software and liveware components in this particular system. To do what? To maintain, to manage, to save needed information. Now, we will discuss later how this is happening. Manual information means, information system means the manual methods are used to store this information. Say as an example, a telephone directory or dictionary, manual information systems. The huge organized collection of computer stored information creates what? You know the answer now, the computerized information systems. So, you can give some examples here. A bank information system, a hotel information system. So, you know that now there are basic components now. If bank information system must contain collection of components, and these components are used to maintain or used to achieve a target. So, bank information system provides details about a particular bank, or if it is in general terms, the banks in a particular country or banks in the world. Hotel information system again provides the same caliber of information about hotels. Right. Then we will discuss the objectives of an information system is to collect correct information or data, process data or information correctly, you can process them correctly, you can collect information or data correctly, and you can process data or information correctly, store processed information in a correct place where you can access them very easily, and disseminate or distribute correct information to the correct person or the organization at the correct time. Can you see that this correct word is highlighted here? Can you see? Correct, correctly, correct. This, what do you mean by disseminate? Disseminate implies you distribute this correct information, right? Correct information to the correct person. The person is there to take decisions. So, you give it to the correct person at the correct time. The person needs to take the decision right now, but what you do? You will give this set of information tomorrow. So, that is not the correct time, right? You give it at the correct time. So, we will discuss some example. Think about student registration system. So, collect correct information or data. You have to collect the details about students and their parents, correct details. Say as an example, accidentally, when the student is writing the age, say instead of 15, student may write 51. So, that is not correct. Yes. So, what is happening? Then there must be a particular process to validate this information and get the correct information into the system. So, that is collect correct information or data, then process data or information correctly, you sort them, you arrange them in a particular order, right, or you arrange them in classes, whatever. So, you process this information or data and store processed information in a correct place, maybe in a file manual filing cabinet with an index, you can retrieve them, you can get it very quickly, or in a relational database where you can get them very easily, faster than manual method. And disseminate, you give or do you distribute the correct information because you are using the correct process. So, you have collected correct data or information. So, you can generate correct information. So, that correct information is given to the correct person, maybe the sectional head or maybe the principal. So, give it to the correct person to take the decision at the correct time. What is this correct time now? Correct time may be the date depending on different situations. In this case, now say if they want to arrange all these students in classes, right. So, at that can be the correct time. So, you have to give correct details, correct information to the correct person at the correct time. Think about an example. Right. A manager of an engineering manufacturing company is considering whether to recruit more people in the near future. What is the most relevant information in this case he has to consider? Can you understand the situation? You have an engineering manufacturing company firm, they want to employ new engineers. So, you can understand very easily, if you concern about the previous scenario, you cannot collect CVs or biodata from different people. You have to get these, you have to collect CVs from engineers where they have the adequate qualification, right. Then you have to collect correct information or data and you have to sort them and you have to save them where you can retrieve them nicely, and you can process them by sorting them in the order to get the best suit or the best person for the particular job criteria, and then the details are given to the HR manager to call them and arrange interviews. Say the engineering manufacturing company information system can be manual or computerized. The information system objectives are to collect what? Correct information or data collect CVs of qualified engineers. This is data creation. You collect them and you save them. The process data or information correctly. select or filter the correct collected CVs to identify the most qualified and list them. Store processed information in the correct place. Store them in a place where it can be obtained fast. Disseminate or distribute the correct information to the correct person or the organization at the correct time. Give the correct list to the manager or HR manager at the correct time to set up the interviews. Now, think about this table. The following table shows the relevant and irrelevant data. Information given and relevant, irrelevant. The person, now how do you collect data now? This is the one example that it shows the correctness, the relevant data. The personal records of all the employees are irrelevant because you want to select the best person or best engineer. So, the personal records of all the employees are not needed here, irrelevant. The previous reports of all the recruited people are not needed, the people or the engineers who are working currently, because we want to get a new engineer or engineers. So, we do not want the previous details. The attendance sheet of all the employees, again not needed. The detailed report of engineers, specified engineers specification and manufacturing order. The detailed reports of engineering specifications, you do not want engineering specifications, and manufacturing orders. Summary report of present and projected personnel requirements. What type of people we need, that is relevant. We have to collect what the summary report of present and projected personnel requirements, what type of quality that we need to maintain. So, that is the relevant information in this case. The value of information. The value of information is in its maximum level at the point that the information is created or the moment the information is disseminated. It is a very important concept. Now, you generate information, you should know when to generate information. What do you mean by when to generate information? The correct time. They are illustrating, they are telling here the value of information is in its maximum level, the maximum value. Maximum level is maximum value at the point the information is created. If it is created now it has the highest value. If time passes, the value is decaying, or the moment the information is disseminated. You give the information right now, that is that it has the highest value. Disseminated means released. The value of information, value of the information is reduced gradually. with the time and becomes less valuable. So, we can see the diagram here. Can you see? This is the time that it has generated, this is the time it has generated or disseminated or distributed. Then when time passes, the value is this axis, it is going down nicely. We will learn an example. Right. The Sri Lankan cricket team won T20 World Cup 2014 tournament. The Sri Lankan cricket fans had the highest value of this information when the moment the information is generated. It is a very good example, right. You are thrilled because we won the match, but when time passes, the value of that information is decaying, value is gradually reducing. You can understand that. Right. Look at these statements. The final match started the moment it's passed, not the time that the information has generated. Thisara Pereira scored the winning runs. Yes, that is the time the people are announcing that we won the match, World Cup. That is the present situation. So, that has the highest value. This information has the highest value. The captain Lasit Malinga received the trophy, again passed. They saw the news on the newspaper, again sometimes after the generation of the valuable information. That is, we won the match, right, that is passed again. You go through the newspapers and get the details, right. Then the next one, they saw the cricket team at the Katunayake airport. That is not the time that the information is generated. So, it has low values, but when Thisara Pereira scored the winning runs, it is the present situation that the information is generated. So, it has a very high value. The big data analytics. Right. The private companies and research institutes capture terabytes of data about their users, interactions in business and social media. That means huge collection of data, right. You collect huge collection of data, big data. This is where the big data analytics is needed to manage the data life cycle. The function of big data analytics, the collecting data from different sources. Can you remember the life cycle now? Yes, you collect data from the different sources, manage it in a way that it becomes available to be consumed by analysts and deliver data products to fulfill the organization's data requirement. The same thing under life cycle. So, these are some details that you have to remember. Right, we will go to some past paper questions. So, can you take some time and just find out the correct answer? Right. This is a past paper question. You can see very easily, right, it is very easy now, you can handle it because you know the concepts properly, right. A manager of an engineering manufacturing company is considering whether to recruit more people in the near future. What is the most relevant information? In this case, he has to consider. What is the answer? The summary reports of present and projected personnel requirements. Right, all the other information that we have discussed earlier is not relevant. This is not relevant because if you start collecting all this information, now we will discuss this matter. Now say, this is the point that the examiner is checking on. If you collect unwanted information or data which is not needed to take the decision, what is happening? You are consuming your valuable storage capacity. And when it comes to concern about searching these details, data, it takes time. And sometimes accidentally you may have input wrong data that is not needed for the processing. And sometimes because of the high storage capacity, as you know, the processing can be, if you concern about big data analytics, right, then what happens, your system tends to slow down, especially if you concern about accessing this data in the via internet, right. So, the details that is given here are irrelevant than the fifth one. Right, we will consider another question, August 2014, question number 9. Right. Now, you can take some time and try to find out the correct answer. Right. Now, if you read through the question, right, you can understand that the data, the point that the information is generated, has the highest value. Now, if you concern about this particular diagram, if you go back and if you see the particular diagram, then you can understand very clearly can you see, if you obtain this particular diagram, you can see very clearly this is the knowledge area that they have tested in the exam, right. The time that the information is generated, the value of the information is reduced gradually with the time and become less valuable. That means, the value is very high concerning about the time it is created or disseminated. You can understand that. This is the point that they have checked on. Right. Can you see the same situation, right? You can easily select the particular answer. What is the answer? The number 2, Thisara Pereira scored the winning runs. Then and there, the valuable information is generated and distributed or disseminated. Right. There is another past paper question, actually this is an MCQ question, right. So, you can see now, and can you please go through this and identify the correct answer. Right. Now, we will go through this. Sometimes it will be little confusing to understand or identify the particular correct answer, but now we will see. Now, we have to have a logic to understand this particular thing. Now, let me see, right, which of the following statements is true with regard to data and information. You know what is data and what is information. Data, in summary, data is meaningless, information is meaningful. You can remember the data life cycle. You collect data, then you organize this data or you process data and you remove unwanted data. Likewise, now if you are concerned about that thing, data and information, the process of generating data and information is very, very important. Now, let me see like this way. Decisions can be made only, this is a very important word, only when a massive volume of data is available. Yeah, you can take very effective decisions, right, big data analytics using, right. If you have massive means huge storage of data, but the word here is only, right. If you, that means you can argue that decisions can be made not only when a massive volume of data is available, right. Massive example, can you tell me an example where we can get this massive volume of data? Think about a server, ISP, internet service providers, or think about a particular website like Gmail or Google. They are maintaining their servers, they have so many customers and they are saving their details, then huge volume, massive volume of data is available. But think about a particular company where they are dealing with say 1000 customers or fewer customers, still decisions can be made without what? Massive volume of data. Still decision can be made. You collect correct data, you have the correct process, then you will be able to generate correct information. So, you can do that very nicely. Then the second point, validity of information depends on the accuracy of data. What do you mean by this? The validity of information. So, can you remember the information, correct information is generated by collecting correct data. Can you remember garbage in, that means incorrect data if you input, even though your process is correct, you will generate invalid information. Now, just think like this. Now, you have data, then on the other hand you have information. 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 Now, in the middle you have the process. Right, this is the normal flow. We say garbage in, GI and garbage out GO. This is why we say this as GI GO, garbage in, garbage out. If you collect garbage data, incorrect data, so you are generating invalid information where your process can be correct, right. Now, just think about this. Now, you know that in order to correct or collect valid data, so you know that before start processing there are two basic checkpoints. We will say this is verification we say verification say this is verification, and you have another particular process, another one that is validation, we say validation process, right. So, now what is happening here, before you enter data into the system, this validation process is activated and then data is entered to the system, right, and this data is saved in the storage location. This is the storage, and the verification process is then implemented on this data in order to verify this data. So, if the data is verified and valid, only the processing is starting. This is how the systems are organized, right. Now, if you consider validity of information depends on the accuracy of data. So, this is a correct statement. The validity of information, this information is based on the accuracy, right, accuracy of data, right. Then the information obtained by processing data is always accurate. You can understand now. Can you understand now? Information obtained by processing data is always accurate. It is not always accurate. So, what are the circumstances or instances where this information can go wrong? By looking at the diagram, you can see that they are telling you that this information is not correct. They are telling the information obtained by processing data is always correct. This is always correct if the processing is correct, but my argument is this information can be wrong on different two situations. What is that? Information can be wrong if processing is wrong, but the data that you have collected is correct. Can you understand? Data that you have collected is okay, then but the processing and the instruction set given to do this particular process is not accurate. So, your information can be wrong. Or what is the other situation? Your processing is correct. Now, this is correct, but this is wrong. The data that you have collected is not accurate. Can you understand? So, even data is not accurate, but the processing is okay, correct, still the information is not correct. The worst case scenario is what? This is also wrong. Collected data that you have the collected data is not accurate. At the meantime, as well as the process that you have defined, or the processing or instruction set is not also accurate. So, what is happening now? The information that is generated is not correct. Can you understand? Right. That is why we say we are marking this as wrong, because information obtained by processing data is always, this is the word, it is not always accurate. The fourth point, in order to obtain information, data must be collected from multiple sources. In order to obtain information, right, data must be collected from multiple sources. Now, in order to obtain information, you can obtain, that means you can process information, right. Actually, obtaining information implies different meanings. You get information. Can you remember a particular process that we did? Data, process, information, that information again acting as data again, and input into the process and generate information. So, in order to obtain information, data must be collected from multiple sources. What do you mean by these multiple sources? Many sources, right. Yes, you can collect data from multiple sources, but in order to obtain information, right, right, that is not the only way, right. You can what? You can collect data from multiple sources, as well as you can get information from multiple sources, and information can again be input to a process to generate more meaningful information. So, because of that, this is a particular thing that is not correct. Then the accuracy of information depends only on, look at this word, only on, you have to be very careful on these words, only on the accuracy of input data. Can you understand? They say accuracy of information here, accuracy of information depends only on the accuracy of input data, only on this. You know that, right. I can see a nice smile, right. You can see that, right. This is also a problem. Can you see? Depending on these two only, this information is accurate or not, right. So, because of that, you can say the accuracy of information depends not only on the accuracy of input data, but also on the accuracy of the processing, right. Okay. Right. We will go to the next one. Okay. Right. August 2015, question number 35. So, you can take some time and try to select the correct answer. Right. Right. Now, we will see. Right. Now, you can see the same point has tested again. Right. August 2015, question number 35. Which of the following chart illustrates the golden value of information? Golden value means what? The highest value of information. If you go through these particular charts, you can easily select this one. Can you see? Now, you can argue why these are not correct, right? When the information, actually you have to think always, this is the point that they generate the information, right? That is up to you to decide, right? This is the point that they generate the information, and the point that they generate the information has the highest value. When time passes, the value is gradually reducing, right? Think about this one, it has the lowest value, right? And when the time, think about this one, when time passes, what happens? The value is increasing and make it constant, right? And the next one, it is gradually increasing with the time, and it has a different wave. So, because of that, can you remember the generation of information at the correct time is very, very important, and it has the highest value. It has the highest value when it is generated. The point that is generated O, you can add to that by telling disseminated or distributed. Right. Now, we will go to the, I will give you a certain summary on this, right, to indicate what we did today, right, and I hope you can try out more questions on this. Right. Now, these are the points that we have considered today. Yes, revision outcomes, defining data and outline its life cycle. We have defined data and outline its life cycle, and the organize the need of a process to define data and information. And you can see that interrelationship between data, process and information, and under that we have discussed the extra things like validation and verification in order to collect correct data, and list various forms of data and their characteristics, right. We have discussed the various forms and their characteristics of data in detail, and describe the characteristics of quality data, right. What are, you can remember now what are the characteristics of quality data, right. You can remember the life cycle of data, right, and you can remember to illustrate the value of information. The value is there, the highest value is there when it is generated or disseminated, right. Describe the characteristics of valuable information, right. What are the characteristics of valuable information? Recognize big data, that is what big data analytics, and their need and analysis, right? Why we need big data and their need and their analysis, right. So, then if you concern about this particular chapter, right, the section, the competency level 1.1, you can understand most of the time they are testing this in your MCQ paper. Sometimes rarely they will be able to give you some scenario type questions in paper 2 part B. So, you will be able to discuss those questions as well, but the most important thing is to understand the difference between data and information, right, and what are the relevant processors needed to generate the correct information, right. The validity and the correctness of information is totally depending on the correctness of data as well as the correctness of the process. You know that process is controlled by an instruction set, then the instruction set, it must be very accurate in order to process them correctly. So, I will conclude the lesson regarding data and information, competency level 1.1. This is the revision lesson. So, I hope you can understand it better now and wish you all the best on this particular section.